They tell you not to trust the feeling in your gut, that paranoia makes monsters out of small things. They don't tell you what it feels like when instinct keeps showing up with receipts. My name is Alex. Steph and I met at 25, married at 26. We were young, stupid, and in love the way only fresh marrieds are. Confident, loud, convinced we had forever. For 3 years it was ordinary, and ordinary was fine. We worked, we cleaned, we rented cheap movies and made bad pancakes. Then the little fissures began. The delayed texts, the quiet defensiveness when I asked where she'd been, the faint hint of a scent that didn't belong to her on the collar of her coat. At first I blamed sleep, work stress, my own imagination. At the end of the day, I wanted to be the husband who trusted, not the man who snooped. But trust is a currency you spend, and she was spending it without telling me. The first major alarm was the perfume. Steph wore florals, a habit, a morning ritual. One Saturday, I opened her car to grab the glove box manual and leaned in. There was a different smell, heavier, cleaner, the kind that reads like a man's cologne. It was subtle, but it sat on the upholstery like a punctuation mark. When I mentioned it, she gave me a story about a coworker whose car was being repaired and how she'd given him a lift. The answer fit the moment, but it didn't settle the questions that had already multiplied. I tried the straightforward route. I sat her down and said, gently, that I'd noticed changes and that if anything was wrong, I wanted to fix it. She smiled, told me I was worrying too much, said she loved me. The smile was so practiced I could have cataloged it frame by frame. It didn't make me feel better, so I did something cowardly and brave all at once. I bought a voice-activated recorder and hid it in her car. A mechanic checking his partner's vehicle isn't suspicious, it's routine. So placing the little device was as easy as tucking a napkin into a glove box. For 2 weeks it was nothing but radio static, muffled traffic, the odd sing-along to a song I hated. Each night I sat with the recorder in my hands, telling myself patience wasn't surrender. That's how proof looks when it's not happening in front of you. A long, small accumulation of moments. On the 15th day, the file sizes jumped. I remember the way my thumb hovered over the play icon like it was the moment of a rope pull. The beginning was mundane, small talk about work, names tossed around that meant nothing until they did. Then a man's voice called someone Sebastian. Then a pause, a giggle, a whisper I recognized as hers even in the muffled audio. After that, the soundscape changed. Kisses, a breathless laughter, that awful, intimate noise you would never want to hear come from the space you built with someone else. For 10 minutes, maybe more, someone was in the passenger seat of the car I bought her, and they made a private world in the back of it. I listened and felt the room shrink. Anger came, sharp and hot, but underneath it there was a raw ache, grief for the 27-year-old who had once promised forever on a coffee shop napkin. I didn't play it for friends. I didn't leak it. I stored it in the cloud and on my phone, and in a place in my head I didn't want to visit again. The recording was the clearest evidence of betrayal I would ever find. Not speculation, not a suspicious smell or an evasive text. It was voices, proof with cadence and breath. I almost confronted her that night. I paced, imagined the perfect blowout, the righteous speech that would explode and leave only truth. But revenge feels good in fantasies and foolish in real life. Instead, I called a lawyer. The advice was plain: don't burn bridges you might need when you litigate. Don't go loud until the papers are ready. Wait. Let the system take the shape of your anger. So I waited, and in waiting, I learned discipline. I kept calm while my chest wanted to tear out of me. I took the steps that didn't feel like victory yet: a retainer signed, documents prepared, service scheduled. When the process server knocked that weekend and Steph took the envelope with a distracted laugh, I felt a strange, cold triumph. She opened it and looked back at me like I had handed her a menu. "What is this?" she asked, so stunned it was almost comical. I played the recording. I watched the color drain from her face as the audio replayed her own choices. She tried to stop it, begged me to turn it off. I didn't. If I had to live in the discomfort of hearing it, so did she. Her explanations came in a rush. Elevator chats, a handsome flirt, a near drug deal parking lot that became a tryst. Convenient, exciting. I listened as she framed it, and between her words, I heard the lifetime of small betrayals that had led us there. She cried. She seemed genuine at some moments, calcified at others. I told her to leave. Not because I wanted to punish in a primal way, but because staying with a person who had already triangulated her heart with strangers felt poisonous. She left within the hour. Legal proceedings were mercifully quick. Steph agreed to a settlement. I kept the apartment because I needed a place that still felt like mine. Her employer eventually conducted an internal investigation. I sent the recording. And Steph and Sebastian lost their jobs under policy violations. That detail tasted like a justice I wasn't sure I wanted until it was done. She called afterwards, not angry but hollow, her voice a dry lake bed. I told her I was done listening. In the months after, I could have chosen spectacle. I could have spread the recording, dragged names through mud. Instead, I did something that felt scarier and more adult. I reclaimed my life in silence. I learned how to cook simple meals without counting the nights. I went to concerts I would have avoided before. I traveled to Banff, the place she had always said she wanted to see, and I filled my phone with photos of sunsets and ridiculous tourist smiles. I posted them not to wound, but because the life I had forfeited piece by piece came back in small, stubborn increments. She reached out a few times with apologies that smelled of self-preservation more than remorse. Once she called and asked if I was drinking, if I was okay. It barely registered. The man who had been ready to explode was now, oddly, steady. I listened in those moments like someone hearing a foreign language, polite, practiced. I told her I was fine and hung up. People ask online whether evidence should be gathered or confrontation immediate. I won't moralize the path I took. I will say this: patience gave me clarity. It let me act with a strategy instead of fury. It kept me from doing something I would regret. The recordings were receipts, yes, but what mattered more was what I did when I had them. I chose legal ends, not public spectacle. I chose to protect myself, and in those quiet choices I found something like peace. On a warm evening a year later, I stood in a small garden, holding the hand of someone who listened to me the way I listened to her. The person beside me had patience that matched my new steadiness, respect as quiet as a steady heartbeat. When I saw Steph once at a distance, months after the divorce, there was nothing left to prove. She had learned the lessons the hard way. I had learned not to be wrecked by someone else's choices. You don't always get the cinematic revenge people expect. Sometimes you get something quieter and truer, the slow, steady reclamation of your life. The recordings stayed in a folder I almost never opened. They were proof, yes, but they were also a monument to a lesson, that love without respect is an illusion, and that sometimes the best answer when betrayed is not to scream into the void, but to build something new where the void used to be.